In this video, we will show you how to replace your vehicle's master cylinder on this Honda Civic. This will be located along the driver's side of your engine compartment. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we want to mention before you start removing your master cylinder is you're going to have to bleed the brakes. Once the new master cylinder is in place, you will have to safely raise and support and remove all wheels. So make sure you're in a safe area to do so. Now to remove your wheel, the first thing you need to do is safely raise and support so the wheel's off the ground. After that, we'll continue on with removing each one of our 5 19mm lug nuts so we can get the wheel off of here. Before we get started on the removal process, the first thing that we want to do is make our way behind each one of the wheels to our bleeder screws attached to the caliper. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that the bleeder screws do not break off in the caliper, or otherwise the calipers would need to be replaced. It's a good idea to know ahead of time. So with that said, let's make our way to the left front wheel. Just a quick inspection of that cover, confirming it is reusable. We'll be using a 10mm for our bleeder screws. It's a good idea to have a collection receptacle under this area. We want to make sure we collect and recycle all fluid as necessary. Go ahead and open that up. You do want to make sure that your bleeder screws can move, and typically you should see a little bit of fluid making its way out of this area. After that, just go ahead and lightly close it off and repeat the process behind each one of your wheels. Go ahead and remove the cap, give it a quick inspection and set it aside. Inside of the master cylinder, you're going to find that there's a small screen. We can remove that. Let's be careful not to get any brake fluid on any of our paint of our vehicle. For this, I'm just using a small angled pick. It's easier than reaching in by hand. Quick inspection of that screen, we'll set it aside. Now we're going to remove as much fluid from inside of the reservoir as possible. Keep in mind, this is only the upper reservoir. It still has a second reservoir all the way down at the master cylinder, but that one's pretty much impossible to drain from this area. To remove the fluid, you can use a fluid extractor. You can use one that's portable like this, or even one that uses air as a vacuum. After removing as much fluid as possible, let's continue on reinstalling our protective screen. We want to confirm nothing falls inside of the braking system. We can reinstall our cover as well. We're going to have to do some digging to gain access to the majority of the master cylinder, located all the way behind this area on the firewall. We're going to start removing the air filter housing. You're going to find that you have a small air inlet tube here. For that, typically you can just take hold of it and slide it right out of place. We don't have to fully remove that from the engine compartment. Now let's have a look along the top of the upper air filter housing. In this area, you're going to find another inlet tube. This one leads from the air filter housing all the way over to the throttle body. Go ahead and loosen up your 5.5mm headed clamp here. We don't need to go too far, just enough that we would be able to slide this housing out of place. There we are. With that loose, we're going to continue on to carefully separating this area. Sometimes you can do it by hand. It may also be easiest if you just gently pry it out of place. Whatever you do, just be extremely careful not to cause any damage to that hose. A quick inspection of the hose to confirm it's not torn, worn, or damaged in any way. This one looks fine as far as I can see here. Next, we can start dislocating our lower air filter housing from its mounting point. You're going to find that you have 2 10mm headed mounting bolts holding it in place, one along the front of the air filter housing, and there's one along the driver's side. Now let's get that next one. Let's take hold of the air filter housing and carefully start pulling it up and out of position. There's a couple things to pay attention to. We have our air filter inlet along the front area. We're going to have to push that down as we lift this up. Also along the back side of this air filter housing, down along the bottom, you're going to find that it has a rubber grommet. That actually attaches to a metal bracket, which would be located just under it, and it has a small locking tab that we essentially just need to lift this up and off of. Let's try to give it a wiggle here. Felt like it broke free. Push this down. Okay, let's start disconnecting our mass airflow sensor. Now we're carefully pulling up on the air filter housing to disconnect the mass airflow sensor. We can see the electrical connector. On this, you're going to find that it has a locking tab. We're going to have to squeeze that inward and pull this out of place. It can be a tight fit here. Once you do have it disconnected, you want to thoroughly inspect for corrosion. If you see any, it needs to be taken care of. Now go ahead and follow that wiring harness. You can see that it's mounted to the top of the housing here. For this, we're going to separate it. If you were looking along the opposite side of the housing, opposed to where the wiring harness is, you're going to find that you can see 2 green locking ears. We'll go ahead and squeeze those in and hopefully push this out of place. I'm using some long pliers for this. Sometimes you can just try pushing on one side and then the other with a screwdriver of sorts. There we are. We'll set that aside. Remove your master cylinder cap. This one just has tape on it. Along the bottom of the master cylinder reservoir, you're going to find your level sensor. Let's disconnect the wiring harness. It has a locking tab down along the bottom area here, so just go ahead and squeeze that in and pull that out of place. Now let's move over towards the driver's side of the master cylinder reservoir. Up in this area, you're going to find 2 10mm headed mounting bolts. We only need to remove the one holding the reservoir to the bracket. Make our way deep in here. We can start removing that. Take hold of that. You can slide it towards the passenger side to dislodge it from its mounting bracket. We'll rest that back up along the top here and continue on. Now that we have that out of the way, we're going to make our way all the way along the side of the master cylinder. This is where you can see your 2 brake lines leading into it. It's common to still have brake fluid inside of this area, and we want to protect any painted surfaces. Brake fluid is corrosive and it will eat the paint off of your vehicle, so I'm just going to use a collection pad underneath this area. Now for each one of these lines, we'll be using a 12mm. I'm going to start with the forward line first. After we have it removed, a quick inspection, we'll set it aside and continue on to the second. It's pretty much loosened. Should be able to pull that out in a way. A thorough inspection of the fitting and the brake line, confirming it does not need to be replaced. Nothing's rotted here, so let's continue on to the next line. This one's a little bit further towards the rear of the vehicle, heading towards that brake booster. Okay. Get some movement here. I'm gonna have to switch wrenches. My 12mm open head wrench. Now that we have that loose, let's go ahead and take hold of the line. We're going to try to give it a wiggle here and separate it from the master. We've got a little bit more fluid making its way out. Obviously, a quick inspection of that line as well, which as you can tell, ours looks fine. With the lines dislodged, the next thing we'll do is focus on removing our 2 mounting nuts holding this in place. You can see one of them all the way down along the back side of the master cylinder on the inboard side. The next one's going to be on the outboard side all the way over towards the driver's side of the master cylinder. There's our mounting nut. Just a quick inspection of that. We will be reusing it. Let's get the next one out of there. There's that one. That looks good as well. At this point, we should be able to take hold of that master cylinder. We're going to have to give it a little wiggle and start pulling it straight out and forward, away from the vehicle. There we are. It's going to start making its way out now. There it is, friend. Now the next thing we're going to do is clean our mounting point on our brake booster. This is the area that the brake master cylinder is going to sit directly up against. We want to make sure we have a good seating position here. We'll make sure everything's clean, double check for rust or rot. One other thing we'll pay attention to is just confirming that there's no brake fluid that had made its way into that brake booster. If there's any brake fluid in there, it needs to be removed. This looks fine. Let's continue on. The next thing we need to do is bench bleed our master cylinder, installing fluid into the master cylinder and removing any air. To do this, it's going to be easiest if you have a vise on a bench of some sort. We're also going to make sure that we have our master fluid reservoir up nice and high. We want to make sure that it's higher than the lower reservoir. For this, we're going to remove our cap. Inside of this area, you're going to have a small screen. Continuing on, we want to have some brand new .3 or .4 brake fluid. And also 2 new bleeding lines here. They need to have fittings that fit into our master cylinder ports and lead all the way up to our master cylinder fluid reservoir. When installing these fittings, I like to make sure that they're going in by hand first, so we're sure we are not cross-threading them into the wrong positioning. I'm just going to tighten this up. Now at this point, we have to flex our brake line all the way up into the master cylinder reservoir. When we bring it up here, we're not just setting it over the top, we need to actually bring the tip of it deep down into the reservoir as far as possible, at least underneath the fluid level. As we flex this line, we're being extremely careful not to cause any crimps or bends that's going to restrict any type of fluid. We want to make sure fluid can make its way both ways in this line. Okay, that's making its way down inside the master reservoir. Let's continue on to the next line. Continuing on, we're going to start adding brake fluid to the master cylinder reservoir. You're going to find that fluid makes its way through the upper reservoir, through this hose, into the lower reservoir as well. You're going to want to continually top off the master cylinder reservoir as we continue on. Now, to continue bleeding the master cylinder, you can either use a brass dowel like I have here, or you can use a wooden dowel. Essentially, we want to make our way down along this area of the master cylinder. We're going to start pushing this in and let it retract out. When this happens, it's going to start forcing air and fluid up through these lines here, leading all the way to the reservoir. You'll find that there's several air bubbles making their way out. We need to continue repeating this process until only air makes its way through these lines into the reservoir. And once again, continually top off the fluid as necessary. Now that we've bled all the air out of the system, the next thing we're going to do is start removing our bleeding apparatus. Now for this, you're going to find in your kit, it came with 2 plastic covers. Each of these will go into their corresponding ports here. You don't have to worry about mixing them up. I have a funnel underneath this area going into a collection receptacle. We'll pull the lines up and out of our brake fluid reservoir. Now let's start removing the lines, making sure that we collect and recycle that fluid as necessary. When you do this, fluid will make its way out, of course. Okay, just put in our plastic plug here. For these plastic plugs, we really only need to install them far enough that the fluid stops making its way out. Let's continue on. Let's install our protective screen. We can reinstall our cover as well. And now we can carefully get this over to the vehicle. Now, as we bring this over to the vehicle, one more thing that we want to pay attention to is our rubber O-ring gasket right along here. That's a sealing ring. I like to use a tiny bit of petroleum jelly around this area. Now, as we start bringing this over, we want to pay attention to this area here. This will slide over the small shaft located inside of that brake booster. You can see it deep down in that area. Okay, I can see those 2 areas lining up as far as the shafts are concerned. We'll continue sliding that in. As we continue sliding it in, we also want to make sure that our master cylinder aligns with each one of its mounting studs. I can see one is aligned and the other one is not. I'm just going to continue on by gently tilting this, line it up with both of them, and then press it in. Just get the line out of the way. Now that should fit flush up against that brake booster. Continue on with your mounting hardware. Commonly for these master cylinders, you should find that you have a locking washer behind your mounting nuts. If you did not, it's a good idea to replace them with some new ones. We've got the washer on there. Let's continue on with the mounting nut. That one started on. Let's do the same for the other piece of mounting hardware. Let's get the nut on there. Now that we have them both started, let's go ahead and bottom them out. The torque for these is 11 foot-pounds. Okay, that one's bottomed out. I'm just going to bottom out the other one real quick, and then we'll torque each of these. Now we can torque that to that 11 foot-pounds. Now we can attach our lines. We're going to do this one at a time. Let's remove the first plastic plug from the first port closest to that brake booster. Of course, fluid will make its way out of this area, so you want to be extremely careful for that, and of course, collect and recycle it. Looks like it's getting close here. Okay, right there is bottomed out. We want to make sure we take this just a little bit further so we're sure it's tight. If you can torque this, torque it to 16 foot-pounds. That one looks good. Let's continue on to the next line. Okay, bottomed out. Make sure it's nice and tight. Once again, the torque for this would be 16 foot-pounds, assuming you can get a torque wrench in this area. Let's go ahead and clean up our mess around where each one of our lines are so we can confirm there's no leak from this area. After cleaning up the mess around the lines, go ahead and remove anything that you had underneath this area to also collect that fluid, recycle it properly. Now it's time to secure the upper portion of the master cylinder reservoir to its mounting bracket. Along the bottom of the reservoir, you're going to find that you have this area. It will slide into this groove on the bracket. Line it up, slide it in. After that, you want to align your mounting bolt port on the driver's side there. Start in your 10mm headed mounting bolt and snug it up. Okay, bottomed out, just a tiny bit further there. Double check to make sure it's properly secured to the bracket. Now it's time for our level sensor wiring harness. Go ahead and line that up, press it in. Locking tab should be down along the bottom. Audible click, a light tug confirming it's properly secured in place. One last quick inspection inside this area. Prior to installing our air filter housing, we want to make sure everything's tight as it should be. Aside from that, we'll also pay attention to our metal bracket down along this area here. We have this one stud that will fit up into the rubber grommet as part of that air filter housing. I like to apply some lubricant here, so I'm just using a little bit of grease right up along the very tip here. That'll help everything slide into place easily. As we bring the air filter housing into position, we're first going to start with our mass airflow sensor wiring harness. Let's secure it to the air filter housing right along here. We have our green connector. Now we're going to latch in the rest of our electrical connector onto the mass airflow sensor. Line it up, squeeze it in. Audible click, a light tug. Make sure that's secure, otherwise you're going to have a check engine light and a running condition. Now we can get this in position. As we start bringing this into position, we need to be paying attention to that stud that protruded up from the bracket, making sure it goes into the rubber grommet along the bottom of the air filter housing. It's pretty much impossible to see, you just want to carefully reach underneath that area. Be extremely careful for any pinch points. We'll press that in along the backside there, making sure that it's properly secured. After that, each one of the two mounting bolt ports should also be aligned. Start them in, snug them up. Just gonna make sure that's started in here. Now for the next one, it's a little bit more difficult to gain access to. I'm just holding it with a magnet here. We should be able to start bringing it down into position. Make sure it starts in by hand, of course. Double check, make sure that is properly secured. Let's continue on with our air inlet hose. Double check, make sure that's seated all the way around. We'll continue on to the next hose. This one leads from the air filter housing over towards the throttle body. We're going to press it on there as far as possible. We'll use our 5.5mm socket to snug up our clamp. Once you feel as though you have it on there properly, continue on to trying to remove it from the air filter housing. It should not slide out of place. You do not want to have a leak in this area. You'll find that you have a check engine light and a running condition. It's time to bleed the brakes. Go ahead and remove the cap, give it a quick inspection and set it aside. Top off your master cylinder with your brand new brake fluid. We're going to bring it all the way up to this line and reinstall our master cylinder cap. Now it's time to bleed the brakes. We've already removed all wheels and loosened each one of our bleeder screws, confirming that they do open properly. And the process will be the same for each wheel, but there is a specific sequence. As far as the sequence is concerned, we want to start at the driver's side front. We'll go over to the passenger side front once that's completed, make our way up to the master cylinder, and check that fluid. Top it off as necessary. After you've completed that, you're going to the passenger side rear, and then ending at the driver's side rear. To bleed the brakes, of course, we're going to have a collection receptacle because we will collect and recycle all fluid properly. This is easiest if we have a second person inside of the vehicle preparing to pump the brakes for us. Now on this caliper, I'm using a 10mm for my bleeder screw. We'll get our collection receptacle in place. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, please. Now while they're holding, I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and we're watching to see fluid making its way out of here. Commonly, you're going to see some dirty fluid or even air. We need to repeat this process until you see only clean brake fluid making its way out. Go ahead and pump. Go ahead and pump. Okay, Okay, so we're just getting some small air bubbles there. Obviously, if you have to repeat this process several times to remove air or even dirty fluid, you want to go ahead and check that master cylinder just in case. You never want it to run dry on fluid. After that, just go ahead and lightly close it off. We can remove our apparatus from this area. Let's make sure we clean up any mess and reinstall our bleeder screw cover. Okay, we finished bleeding this brake. Let's go over to the passenger side front brake. Repeat this bleeding process. After that, stop at the master cylinder so you can top it off before proceeding to your next brake. Let's get that cap off of there. Top off our brake fluid. Now after topping off the master cylinder, we're at our passenger side rear, 10 millimeter for that bleeder screw, and we have our collection receptacle. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, please. Go ahead and pump. Perfect. You can release, thank you. Let's remove our wrench. We'll clean up our mess, reinstall our bleeder screw cover. Now at this point, you want to repeat this exact same process on the driver's side rear. After that, make your way back up to the master cylinder once again. Now we're back up under the hood. It's time to top off that master cylinder one last time. Double check, make sure your cap is properly secured. You don't want any dirt or moisture making its way into the braking system. Okay friend, we finished our job. The next thing you need to do is go ahead and pump up that brake pedal till it's nice and firm. Triple check for leaks. It's super important to make sure you have no brake fluid leaks. After that, reinstall every one of your wheels. Start on all 5 of your 19 millimeter lug nuts, bottom them out. We got the wheel back on the ground. Let's torque each one of our lug nuts in a crisscross manner to that 80 foot-pounds. Torqued. Take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.